California Governor Gavin Newsom, American psycho Gavin Newsom just signed a bill in California, AB 1955, that drives a wedge between parents and children by allowing public school educators and principals and administrators to hide the gender delusions of minors from their parents. Bars schools from informing parents about the sexual orientation, gender identity madness of minors, of their kids at public schools. Why? Because California State thinks they're a better parent to your children than you are. Remember, what happens in California doesn't stay in California. Welcome to the Seth Gruber Show. We'll convert your children. That's what they told us. That's what they said they would do. It was supposed to be a joke, but we always knew that they were saying the quiet part out loud. That was a San Francisco gay choir a few years ago. You might remember the viral clip when they were singing that. Turns out that's exactly what their goal is, and they continue to prove it to us, don't they? They continue to prove it to us. Of course, who used to be the mayor of San Francisco? American psycho Patrick Bateman. Gavin Newsom, Freudian slip. And now the governor of California, who just signed a bill on July 15th, which bans schools from making rules requiring parental notification if a child identifies as transgender. So let me unpack that. Here's how disgusting and simple this is. Okay, according to California law now, because the governor signed it, schools cannot require teachers to include parents in sexual identities, in gender identities. So if a minor's like, I'm not Sally anymore, I'm Sam. I'm a boy now. You have to call me Sam. Instead of like teachers saying, whoa, I'm just here to teach algebra, man. So I'm not going to call you Sam. Okay, your name's Sally. I'm not going to call you him. That's like you got to go talk to your parent about that, man. That doesn't include me. And I think, let me see. That's right. Children belong to their parents. And public schools should not be hiding that from parents. And we know how this goes, right? Come on. We know how this game goes. What that actually means is that weird, kooky, communist leftists in public education can begin socially transitioning minors. Because if they're not required to inform parents, to notify parents about, I don't know, what if the dude who now says he's a girl wants to go into the girls' locker room? Do you see what I'm saying? The school doesn't have to say. In fact, Newsom says in this new bill, AB 1955, that schools are actually banned, legally barred from making rules that require parental notification about weird sexual orientation, gender identity, trans stuff, which just gives free license, right? Free license for crazy leftist public educators, which we know are most of them, okay, to be able to affirm them in their gender delusions, use their pronouns, God forbid, let them enter the locker room of their choice. This is the kind of insanity that begins to happen, that those doors are open to when you disclude parents from this stuff. God, this stuff is so evil. It's so hard. It's so hard to watch Americans, especially the church in America, basically not preach or speak out against this in any way or inform people about what's happening. Because guess what? It doesn't end here. Do you understand that? It doesn't end here. Do you see how quickly this has gone? Yeah, because I'm called a conspiracy theorist. You're called a conspiracy theorist if you listen to the show, right? I know the names that people call you when you try to blow the whistle on this kind of stuff, fellow fighter, right? They say you're crazy weirdo. Slippery slope, conspiracy theorists, logical fallacy, slippery slope. Yeah, this slippery slope's gotten awful slippery, and I'm wondering where the bottom is, right? And so why is this important? because we moved awfully quickly from California residents in, was it 2008, voting to affirm marriage and reject the Democrats' attempt to legalize gay marriage in California. Yeah, guys, that happened in California. Californians said, no, there's no such thing as gay marriage. And then a homosexual judge, remember it was Prop 8, right? And then a homosexual judge just like vetoed it, just overturned it, just said, no, the people don't get to express their will at the ballot box. So here's gay marriage in California. We moved awfully quickly from Californians opposing gay marriage to now a governor elected by Californians saying schools can hide the sexual identities and gender identities of minors from their parents at public schools. Wow. And here's the thing, right, is that we actually know how this goes. Okay, so for those of you who listen to this and you get all fired up to go share the truth, and people are going to label you conspiracy theorists, tin hat wearing weirdos, here's some proof to actually back up what I'm saying. And we're going to get into more detail here about how it never stops here. It will get worse. I'm in a new documentary. It came out earlier this year. It's called The War on Children. You should go watch it. It's over 2 hours, but it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. Go to thewaronchildren.com. My friends Robbie and Landon Starbuck did the film. Thewaronchildren.com. And they tell the story of a mom who was interviewed in the documentary, a mom in California, whose daughter decided that she was a boy, okay? And so the school began to socially transition her, respect her gender identity. And you know what I'm saying? Like, when you quote unquote respect someone's gender identity and use their pronouns, you're helping with the social transition. I'm not talking about medical intervention yet. I'm just talking about social affirmation and social transition. You're participating in that when you entertain the delusion and you go along with the lie. Okay. Of course, many of these people, maybe they believe this weird Gnostic heresy of like being trapped in the wrong body or whatever. The point is, they're helping this young girl transition. She wanted to be used by a boy's name and boy's pronoun. The mom didn't know what was going on. Okay. And one day the school calls her and says, you're harming your child's mental health. You're not using her pronouns. We have evidence to believe that the daughter actually made a claim of suicide, but she didn't actually attempt suicide to get maybe more attention or help transitioning. The story's pretty wicked. Go to thewaronchildren.com, watch the film, watch this mother's testimony. She could not get in contact with her daughter, who said she was a boy. She couldn't get in contact with her, okay? And they were keeping her at some facility. The state of California functionally kidnapped a minor because, parents are a threat. Parents are a threat. Because you're harming, you're harming their mental health or something, and you're not using their pronouns and they're, calling them their new name. Your daughter's actually a boy, as it turns out, and so you're harming their mental health. And so, maybe we need to call Child Protective Services. I mean, hey, it's for your child's benefit and health that we're keeping them from you, okay? Her daughter killed herself. And she never got to say goodbye or help her daughter because the state of California decided they know better. So don't call me a conspiracy theorist. Don't call this stuff kooky, weird, sensationalist rhetoric, okay? Just to smear the left or whatever. This kind of stuff is happening, and it's a consequence and result of legislation like this, which Newsom just again signed on July 15th, AB 1955, a bill that prohibits school districts from enacting policies that require parents to be notified if their child has asked everyone at the school to use a different name or pronoun. The passage of this secrecy bill had 29 Democrats voting yes and 8 Republicans voting no. So a remarkable shift and an incredible wedge that the state of California is trying to drive between parents and children in schools. And by the way, this is going to spark outrage from lifelong Democrats. You know lifelong Democrats. You have some of these friends, right? I'm talking about the people who were like, they're not like, woo, drag queen story hour, woo, third trimester abortions, shout your abortion. Like, they're not like that, but they still vote for the people who support that. It's hard to make sense of, but I'm saying that they haven't like completely lost their mind. They're not going to be on board with this kind of stuff. But the Democrat Party does it anyways. Newsom does it anyways. And so you are inevitably going to get more stories like that mom's story in the War on Children, whose daughter killed herself because she could not get in contact or go see her daughter because the state of California was hiding the daughter from her mom. Why? Because you're harming them. So what happens now with Newsom's new 1955 AB 1955 bill that says, hey, schools, you can't require parental notification. You can't include parents when their minor in the classroom is socially transitioning and attempting to keep it hidden from the parents. You know how this goes, right? You know how this goes. A lot of these stories come out. Kids, minors, who get a ton of social affirmation and comments and slay queen and attaboys and celebrations from their peers when they say, I think I'm trans, right? But they don't want their parent to know yet that they're sort of living and entertaining these delusions. So they'll ask for that identity or whatever to be respected at school, but not really like inform the parents. So they're literally like being transitioned socially at the school, celebrated as a new identity, as a new gender, as a new person. And now the state of California says, yeah, don't tell the parents. Yeah, hey, California public schools, you actually can't notify the parents that that's happening at school. What? Remember, in the state of California, you can be 12 or older and get an abortion without parental consent, and the insurance company can't notify the parents that their kid charged the murder of their grandkid to their insurance company. The insurance company can't notify the parents. You're like, wait, what? So how much longer until like the schools are helping kids get puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones? Because remember, they call both things healthcare. Let me be very clear. The left calls abortion healthcare, and they call gender-affirming care healthcare. They call it gender-affirming healthcare. When you socially transition and use chemical or surgical intervention to help someone, quote-unquote, come into their new identity, they call that gender-affirming healthcare. And Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in the world, is the second largest provider of cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers. So they view it as part of the same sort of cult religion, right? That killing babies in the womb or castrating minors outside the womb chemically, that's all healthcare, okay? And if the California respects abortions without parental consent, because it's healthcare at 12 or older, how much longer until schools are helping minors get cross-sex hormones, which we're hearing stories about already, without parental consent or knowledge or involvement? This is the stuff that will happen downstream more and more and more because of bills like this. It's like, man, we're through the looking glass now, aren't we? Sometimes I look around and I'm like, where's the Cheshire Cat? Where did Alice go? What Humpty Dumpty? Like, we are through the looking glass now, aren't we? Aren't we? And by the way, a lot of this was actually kind of predicted in Alice in Wonderland. Funnily enough, there's this interaction between Humpty Dumpty and Alice in Wonderland. And Humpty Dumpty says, when I use a word, it means precisely what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. In other words, we shape reality. We shape language. And Alice says, can you really make a word mean so many different things? That's all. And Humpty Dumpty replies, the question is which is to be master. That's all. So presumably, Humpty Dumpty means, are we to master language or is language to master us? Which is to be master? He says, when I use a word, it means whatever I choose it to mean, which means that like words, language don't even have definitions or structure to it. It means whatever we choose it to mean. So we can redefine reality to fit the preferences of the majority or the preferences of the state or the preferences of the individual. So if we govern language, then there's no objective truth and we can reshape the world to our own liking. But if language is to master us, then there is an objective standard reality that we're beholden to. And so words or language are pointers that point to or refer to something that actually exists in reality, in the real world, which is to be master. When we play the pronoun game, right, pronoun patty cake, we're using language to mean things that they don't mean. We're using words to refer to things that those words don't refer to, which is to be master. We believe we are masters and we can refit the world, right? Margaret Sanger's first magazine bore the headline, No Gods, No Masters. When you say there's no gods, no masters, by the way, all that means is I'm God and I'm the only master that matters. And so we're gonna literally reshape the world into our own likeness. So if I have to cut off genitals or do weird stuff to my body to make myself feel like a woman instead of a man, then I'm going to remake myself in my own image because I am the master. When we play pronoun patty cake games, like this bill is inevitably going to encourage schools to do, as they respect the gender identities of minors who don't want the teachers to tell their parents that they're playing gender delusion games at public schools, we're going to see more of this happen, okay? And more stories of parents horrified at what's been happening to their kids at schools, and stories of young people committing suicide. They tell you that when you don't use someone's pronouns or respect their transgender identity, that you're going to increase transgender suicides, that they will kill themselves if you don't respect their pronouns. The irony to this whole thing, of course, is that we're seeing increases in suicidality and depression because of people who identify as transgender, because you're trying to live as someone you're not, okay? And to top off the irony cake here, the first transgender thinker, really the first transgender surgeries, was helped by John Money, who was a pedophile. He's actually celebrated by the North American, I think, Man Boy Love magazine. Disgusting things I learned in my research on John Money. And he started the gender identity clinic at Johns Hopkins University. And this is where transgenderism comes from. Actually, the religious premises behind transgenderism go back a lot further. It goes back to kind of the Gnostics, who believe that we're not our body and the body's a prison of the soul and we have to free the real person from the bondage of biology. But transgenderism, as we know, it really started with John Money, because the parents of the Reimer twins came to John Money because David Reimer had a botched circumcision as a baby, and this was in the late 50s or early 60s. And so after a botched circumcision, John Money encouraged the parents of the Reimer twins to completely castrate David Reimer, construct rudimentary female genitals, raise David as a girl named Brenda, call him a girl and raise him as a girl, give him dolls, and then in dresses, and in puberty to introduce estrogen. His parents lied to him. John Money forced David Reimer and his twin brother to do sexual acts on one another, which he photographed like most pedophiles do because he got off on it, and he should have been hung in the public square like we used to treat pedophiles in the land of the free and the home of the brave. I'm just acknowledging what used to happen. And then when David Reimer forced the truth out of his father years later that he was actually a boy, he spent thousands of dollars trying to reverse the damage done to his body, identified as David, the boy and man that he actually is, married a young woman, adopted some kids, but the damage and trauma done to David through this psychopathic pedophile scientist named John Money, who, like Joseph Mengele, really got off on doing weird experiments with twins, eventually killed himself, as did his brother, through a shot in the head and an overdose. Turns out the first transgender quote-unquote experiment on someone through surgical intervention and social affirmation resulted in that person killing themselves. And yet the left has the gall today to tell conservatives and pro-lifers and Christians and Republicans that when you don't go along with transgender delusion and affirm their identity, you will cause them to kill themselves. They flipped the whole thing on its head and force-fed it into the mouths of American citizens. Like, we're not smart enough to do our research and know the real history behind all of this. Okay, so what happened to the mom of this young person in California thanks to bills like this from Newsom? She killed herself because of the transgender delusion, not because her mom wasn't using the pronoun he, for goodness sake, okay? Will convert your children. They make jokes about this, and yet that's what they're doing. And this new bill, AB 1955, will allow radical Marxist, communist leftists in the public education sector to continue converting children because they don't have to inform the parents. The bill says you schools are not allowed. You're not allowed. You're legally barred. It is illegal for you to inform parents or notify them if their child at the public school is living in a completely different transgender identity than they live at home. And we're going to hide that from the parents. So my earthly hero, Pastor Jack Hibbs, with the school district that he is in, right, Chino Valley Unified School District, has been in the national news and state news because they're pushing back against this crazy delusion. And they have now sued the state of California for this notification policy to try to block schools from notifying parents. What is it about the kids, huh? Have you ever thought about it? What is it about the attempt from crazy, kooky, weirdo leftist revolutionaries to try to separate kids from their parents, to try to be the primary formative influence upon children rather than the parents? It's because children are the future. If you can destroy their innocence or inculcate them with ideals or indoctrinate them while they're young, before their ideas have really shaped about the world, and force feed those ideas to them, you control the future. And if you control the next generation, you do control the future, right? And by the way, this is a tried and true strategy. Hitler used to say things like, I don't care about my detractors because I have your children in my schools, right? Monica Klein, a former Planned Parenthood sex educator who's been on this show before, and she's a friend, she used to work for Planned Parenthood teaching this kind of radical, obscene, pornographic sex ed that we see in a lot of American school districts and public schools that bring these angry parents to school board meetings. She used to say that her Planned Parenthood bosses and colleagues would frequently say things like parents are a barrier to service. Parents are a barrier to service. Well, what's the service? Well, wait a second. Remember, Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider in the world, and they're the largest provider of that pornographic sex ed in the schools, the obscene, comprehensive sex ed. They're the largest provider of both of those things in America. So wait a second. What's the service? If Planned Parenthood lackeys admit to saying parents are a barrier to service, well, the service is the weird sex ed in the schools and abortions. So sex ed is their sales funnel, abortion is their product, and your children are their prospects. And they admit that parents are a barrier to them providing those services because they know that parents would oppose at what's going on. So they need to be removed from the picture. Newsom just did that, just signed the bill to remove parents from the picture of how their children are being indoctrinated and socially transitioned into the delusion and religion of transgenderism in America's public schools. This has been a long strategy. And they've admitted this, by the way. They've admitted this. We'd like to thank our sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show today, Every Life Diaper Company, everylife.com, everylife.com, America's pro-life diaper company. Come on. That's how you build a culture of life. You got to defund the culture of death. How do you do that? You don't spend your dollars and money with businesses who hate you and your values. And in this case, hate the unborn children, because every major, big American diaper company rhetorically supports, celebrates, or in some cases financially supports the abortion industry. So the people that sell diapers to babies help kill babies. What? Does capitalism drive that? No. Kooky, leftist, humanist religions drive that. And if you want to oppose that, you got to shop in alignment with your values. Everylife.com. My wife and I use Everylife, okay? We get our diapers and wipes from there. They're great. They're wonderful. Every Christian should be doing this, for goodness sake. Every pregnancy resource center. And you know what? Every nursery at a church should be doing this. Everylife.com. Promo code Seth10. Seth10 for 10% off your first order, and let them know that we sent you. Everylife.com. Thank you for supporting the Seth Gruber Show. This comes actually straight out of the Frankfurt School. I don't know if you're familiar with the Frankfurt School, but the Frankfurt School is where we get, let's call it critical theory and critical race theory. Which kind of became the hot topic in the public debate in the public square in 2020, 2021, because of the 1619 Project, right? And because of BLM Incorporated burning down the country. And then there became this whole debate over, why are they teaching this stuff in schools? Why are they saying America's systemically racist? That white kids should be forced to apologize to little black kids. I don't know if you remember some of these stories, but there were stories of public schools making little white kids apologize to their black child-aged classmates. For what? For being white, because white people participate in systemic racism even if they're not a racist. That's what we're told by these people. So that's where that comes from. It comes from the Frankfurt School. Critical theory, critical race theory, cultural Marxism is developed by Antonio Gramsci, by Marx, okay? And then because the Frankfurt School was led by a lot of German Jews who feared Hitler, They actually fled Germany, and they moved the Frankfurt School from Frankfurt, Germany, to Columbia University. Columbia University becomes sort of the academic breeding ground of people like Bill and Hillary Clinton. Columbia University houses the Frankfurt School. Okay, so the point is, these Marxists moved their school from Germany to New York City to disciple a whole generation of American leftist academics that later became tenured professors at America's universities. And they became the fathers of sort of the radical hippie movement and the radical yippie movement. People out of the Frankfurt School were people like Herbert Marcuse, one of the fathers of the free love movement. Herbert Marcuse, who once said, "The way back into Eden is to take another bite of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." In other words, commit the original sin again in order to enter that perpetual state of innocence, to get back into an Edenic paradise. We want Eden without God. We want Eden without the commandments given to us by our Creator. Herbert Marcuse then becomes the mentor to people like Angela Davis. Angela Davis is an older lady now. She's a Marxist, a critical race theorist, and she became the mentor to people like Nicole Hannah-Jones of the 1619 Project. She became the mentors to people like Alicia Garza, the co-founder of BLM, Black Lives Matter Incorporated. And these people were very honest about their goals. One of the directors of the Frankfurt School, Max Horkheimer, was not shy in explaining this strategy. He once said, "The revolution will not happen with guns. Rather, it will happen incrementally, year by year." He said, "We will infiltrate their schools and bureaucracies." Did you catch that? "We will infiltrate their schools and bureaucracies, transforming them into Marxist entities as we move towards universal egalitarianism." This was the plan. This was the goal. That if you want to change the culture, you have to approach it culturally. You have to control the formative institutions of power. And what could be one of the more powerful institutions of cultural transformation? And the public education sector, which should have never existed, by the way. So they can indoctrinate the next generation into certain ideals and ideas. But they told us what their plan was, and then they went ahead and did it. "We'll convert your children." It's not a conspiracy theorist. They told us what they would do, and then they did it. And then we watched them do it, and we did nothing about it. This was always the play. Gavin Newsom just signed a bill that will become one of the linchpins in our decaying culture on July 15th, AB 1955, to drive a wedge between minors in public schools and their parents. This has been a fundamental belief of Americans across the political spectrum for many decades until recently. The belief that parents are the sole decision makers. Parents are the best situated to disciple, educate, form, make decisions for their children. But now we see Democrats like Kamala Harris and others say things like "our children." She said this on national television multiple times. Maybe we'll cut up some clips here, right? Saying, what does she say? "Our children." Joe Biden talks about "our children." He's not talking about his biological children. When they use this phrase, they're referring in context to American children. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying what you actually believe. Hitler has a quote over, I think, one of the gas chambers in Auschwitz, actually. And he says, "I want to raise a generation of young people devoid of conscience, imperious, relentless, and cruel." Okay, so how do you create a generation of young people devoid of conscience, imperious, relentless, and cruel? Make them believe absurdities. Make them believe absurdities. Make them live in delusion. Voltaire once said, "Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities." Yes, attack truth first, entertain delusion, masquerade the lie as compassion and truth. Once people believe it, they're easy to manipulate and control. When you live in lies, you're easier to control. Maybe that was the agenda and goal all along. What if it's that simple? Now, here's where it goes next. Here's what happens in the next 5 to 10 years if nothing changes. Now, here's the thing, right? It's like, I don't want to be proven right with what I'm about to say, because if I'm proven right in what I'm about to say in the next 5 to 10 years, it will be horrific for America. But if I'm proven wrong and it never happens, then I have no way to prove that I prevented it by waking up the church and getting people to stand against the liberal establishment and their ideals. So anyways, that's why the Glenn Becks and the Bill Buckleys, the prophetic voices of culture and where we're going, are always derided, because they're called conspiracy theorists when they say where we're going. But then if we get there, no one says that they're right, because then they have to admit that they're wrong. But then if they're proven wrong, it means they were probably successful in waking people up. So what they predicted would happen if nothing changed didn't happen because things changed. It's a weird scenario to be kind of called to be a cultural prophet. I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just saying we know the ideas that animate these kind of revolutions, and we know that ideas are not neutral. And we know certainly that the left and the Democrat Party are not neutral in where they want to take the culture in the country. And so here's what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years if nothing changes, okay? You're going to have some kid, some minor, whose parents are probably decent parents, but maybe they can't afford to homeschool them, or they don't have the time, or they can't afford to put them in private education. So they're still in a public school in California or the state of Washington or somewhere like this. And the minor teenager decides that they're the other gender, and they begin to transition at school. They ask their teachers and friends to refer to them as the opposite gender pronouns and different name and they bring clothes to school to change into to reflect their inward identity, but they don't let their parents know about the delusions that they're living out at school. And then they begin to say, I'm afraid to come out to my parents because I'm afraid that they'll hate me and not affirm my identity. And they begin to tell their teachers this. The teachers, thanks to Newsom in California, no longer have to inform the parents. So they now, because probably this will happen, they're able to get these kids cross-sex hormones or puberty blockers. And so CPS or some state-run agency, like happened to the mom who tells her story in the War on Children documentary, goes to the door of this family, knock, knock, knock. Hey, your daughter Sally is actually Sam, and we're concerned as state officials or as public education officials that your refusal to use your child's pronouns or gender identity is a harm to their mental health, that they may be suicidal because of your non-affirming parental perspective. And so we have removed your child from the home, or maybe they come to collect the child from the home to allegedly do so under the guise of compassion to protect this child from the bigoted Christian fundamentalist perspective on gender that these parents have. And then that gun-toting conservative dad pulls out his AR-15 or gun and says, "Get off my porch, you won't touch my daughter." Now we have a firefight between a dad who won't allow state public education CPS people to take his daughter who thinks that she's a boy, and the people trying to transition and delude the child. That will happen in the next 5 to 10 years if nothing changes. If nothing changes, okay, and how do I prove this? Well, what did 10 years ago look like? What did 10 years look like? It's 2024. In 2014, was this acceptable? Was this happening in America? Right? What about 15 years ago? No way. And now it's law. It's law in California that schools must lie to parents, must hide the truth from parents. Where are we going to be in 2034? Yeah. Assuming the current trajectory, that should freak you out. If nothing changes in the next 5 to 10 years, parents will be labeled as domestic terrorists or unfit parents if they don't go along with their minors' transgender delusions and identity, and they will be removed by the state and quote unquote protected from their parents for the child's well-being. What's that line? The welfare of humanity is always the alibi of tyrants. Right? That's what will happen. That's where we're going, actually. And by the way, you're like, Seth, that's crazy. That would never happen in America. Well, things happen gradually. That what did Max Horkheimer say of the Frankfurt School? We will infiltrate their schools and bureaucracies. It will happen incrementally, year by year. That's how political and cultural change has happened in America on the left. It's happened incrementally, year by year, and we haven't been aware to the true agenda. Thank you, San Francisco Gay Choir, for telling us that agenda a couple years ago. We'll convert your children. And what did that song say? Happens bit by bit. Do you remember that? That's what they sang. Happens bit by bit. Oh, you mean like the Frankfurt School freaking cultural Marxists who said it will happen incrementally year by year? I wonder if they're just taking a page out of every cultural Marxist leftist revolutionary who said that's how we're going to do it. You're not a conspiracy theory, Christian. Pro-lifer, for listening to this and being angry. It is happening. Things happen gradually, then suddenly. And I know, like, what's it called? The Godwin's Law, which is like anytime you compare something to Hitler, the Nazis, it's like you're just like lambasted and smeared. You know, it's like, do you not know how to make any other comparisons? It's just that what happened in Nazi Germany was so shocking, and it wasn't all that long ago, that it deserves to be studied. And when you see correlations, they should be acknowledged and they should be scary. Remember, in 1933, it was just boycotts of Jewish businesses that began. And Jews were barred shortly after from holding civil service or university and state positions. Oh yeah, exactly. Have you seen how people are barred from holding certain positions or being hired if they're a Christian and speak out against transgenderism or DEI? By 1935, anti-Jewish racial laws were enacted, and Jews were barred from serving in the German armed forces. By 1936, Jewish doctors were barred from practicing medicine in German institutions. In 1937, Buchenwald opens. By 1938, Jews are required to register all property held inside the Reich. By the end of the year, 1938, all Jewish students were expelled from German schools. By 1939 and 1940, Jews were forced to wear the yellow star, and the, quote, final solution began shortly after. So from 1933 to 1940, 7 years happened gradually, and then things started escalating really quick, very scary. So first, Hitler just denied Jews certain rights of citizenship. No one was killed. In many ways, their lives could continue as normal. But things happened gradually, then suddenly, in order to lull people into a false sense of security, to lull them into apathy. As my pastor Rob McCoy says, tyranny is achieved by incremental steps by good people who submit to systematic control. Year by year, incrementally, said the Frankfurt School cultural Marxists. This has always been the play. This is where we're going. And the ideologies behind our current crazy culture are not all that different to the ideologies that have destroyed other societies and civilizations as well. G.K. Chesterton has this great line. He says, an imbecile habit has arisen in modern controversy of saying that, such and such a creed can be held in one age, but cannot be held in another. He says some dogma, we are told, was credible in the 12th century, but is not credible in the 20th century. But you might as well say that a certain philosophy can be believed on Mondays, but cannot be believed on Tuesdays. You might as well say of a view of the cosmos that it was suitable to 3:30, but not suitable to 4:30. Chesterton says, what a man can believe depends upon his philosophy, not upon the clock or the century. Right. What a man can believe depends upon his philosophy, not the era in which he lives. If people on the left today, and in one major political party, believe the same kind of philosophies and ideologies that we've seen before, and we've seen where those things take us, then we should actually be saying that we might be walking towards the same kind of cataclysmic, catastrophic conclusions that we've studied in our history books that we don't want to repeat. If a kid can be housed and kidnapped from a parent in California and not be allowed, if a parent cannot be allowed to reach or talk to or know the location of their minor because of these kind of transgender ideologies, how much longer until those kids are removed from the home by force and, I don't know, Merrick Garland's new brown shirts in 10 years are investigating Christian parents who are homeschooling their kids that there is no such thing as gender ideology, as transgenderism, for being a mental health risk to the kids who might be trans but aren't comfortable to come out as such because of the heteronormative bigotry of their Christian parents. That will happen in America. if nothing changes. Do you want that kind of country? Do you want that kind of America? I don't. For the future of my children and, the future of my fellow citizens who might not understand the implications of all these things, but who deserve to be warned of where we're going. Newsom just signed this July 15th, AB 1955. Why are not more people up in arms about this? Why aren't we talking about this? What did Hitler say? I want to raise a generation of young people, devoid of conscience, imperious, relentless, and cruel. We've seen civilizations before where children ratted out their own parents for not supporting the political ideology of the entrenched regime. Why could that not happen again? There's no reason why it could not happen again, but it will happen gradually. And we need men and women who understand the times they live in and the ideologies and ideas that animate our crazy culture today to warn the West, to warn the church, to warn our fellow Americans of where we're headed and how we can maybe turn this ship around before it's too late. Share this episode with your pastor, your friends, your family members, your centrist Democrat friends who would be losing their minds if they understood the implications of this bill just signed by Newsom. They told us they would convert our children and corrupt them bit by bit. They are now signing the laws that will enable them to do that. The only question is, what will you do about it? Well, at the White Rose Resistance, we are the fastest growing pro-life organization in America, and we are mobilizing believers and launching resistance chapters all around the country to train, mobilize, educate, and send out believers to do something about this madness and to oppose the culture of death. Not just by building a culture of life, but by tearing down the culture of death and contending culturally and politically against this madness. Go to thewhiterose.life, thewhiterose.life, and join us as an ally at $35 a month to help us launch these chapters and wake up the church. And you get a battle box in the mail when you support us and you join our digital community. It's very cool. We have courses, curriculum, and community. $70 a month, you join our book club. It's called Books in the Barracks, and we read a book together once a month, and we talk about it live on Zoom. And if the author's alive, sometimes the author shows up. It's very cool. We need your help. Join as an ally at $35 a month or air support at $70 a month. And to host a screening of my new documentary, The 1916 Project, which is only screening in churches right now, go to the1916project.com and press host a screening to bring it to your church, and to pre-order my book, which comes out on September 4th. Pre-order it now. The 1916 Project, The Lying, the Witch, and the War We're In at Amazon, but better yet, the1916project.com, and support a ministry committed to standing against the culture of death. Until next week, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.